Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
And welcome everybody into a special edition of the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. This is Kenneth, founder and senior analyst for the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. My team has the day off as they're getting ready for the big show prep work that will be in your feed or on your YouTube channel later on tomorrow evening, as we're recording this on Tuesday, 5 o'clock Central Time. Wanted to do this podcast because I felt like it was important enough for us to take a look at, so we wanted to share that with you. And what we're going to do in this podcast is we're going to look at where we had teams ranked, power ranked as far as the preseason goes, and where those teams currently sit right now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the Power Four conferences and just really take a look at, okay, where are some teams that we've really had to make some positive adjustments and some negative adjustments. So we're going to start right there in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And let's just take a look at the conference as a whole. As we know that we have 17 teams that are full-time members of the ACC. And let's just take a look at who's been the biggest drop in the conference, and conversely, who has been the biggest riser in the conference from where we had them at the preseason. And of course, folks, there's no surprise that the Florida State Seminoles have been one of the biggest disappointments in college football this year. They sit with a 1-6 record. Now, when we say power rankings, that's not their overall rankings and where we have them in our top 25 each week. Our power rankings just is a numerical number that's assigned to each team based on how they've played and who they've played. So it doesn't take, into account all the other things that we do for the top 25, like your defensive metrics, your offensive metrics, your special team metrics, your strength of schedule. It has a little bit of those components, but it's not nearly as expansive as just our power rankings are. So when I'm looking at these numbers, I'm looking at how far of a downgrade we've had for each team, or how big of an upgrade we've had since the preseason until we finished up with week 8 last weekend. And as I said, Florida State, the biggest drop. We have downgraded Florida State from the preseason till now 24.5 points. And when you look at their record, 1-6, as I mentioned, it's not a big surprise that that has been the biggest drop off in this conference. Another team that we have absolutely downgraded from the preseason up until last week is the North Carolina State Wolfpack. They've been downgraded about 17 and a half points from the preseason. You look at North Carolina State, 4-4, and they have absolutely gotten smacked around in some of their primetime matchups. Look no further than back in the early weeks of the season when Tennessee absolutely smoked them in Charlotte. This team has absolutely struggled against really good teams, and that is why you've seen such a massive downgrade. Let's talk about on the positive side here for the ACC. Four teams that have actually been upgraded, let's say at least 8 points from the preseason. And we're going to start with the University of Virginia, one of the biggest surprises in the ACC right now. Sitting right now with a 4-3 record, we've upgraded Virginia 8 points from the preseason rankings. Another team that we've absolutely upgraded, Miami. Now, we were already high on Miami, but this team is 7-0. Some tight wins, absolutely, but this team has absolutely performed a little bit better than what we thought in the preseason. So we've actually respected that with Miami, upgraded them about 8.5 points. Another team that we've absolutely upgraded is the Pitt Panthers. Pitt, we've upgraded almost 11 points from the preseason until now. Pitt sitting there with a 6-0 record has looked really good, and that's why you heard in our latest top 25 poll where they're sitting. This team has absolutely looked phenomenal. Now, their power rankings overall still, as far as their quality of opponent, will get tested as we get deeper into conference play. But as of this moment, we have definitely upgraded this team. Another team that we've absolutely upgraded out of this conference, and that is SMU. The Mustangs, 6-1 on the season. We've upgraded them about 10 points from the preseason. So you can see these power rankings, while they may not be high as far as quality, they have seen improvement. Just giving you a picture of where the ACC overall rankings are at the moment. When you look at the average power ranking for all 17 teams, their average power ranking is 51st. We'll get into that here in just a moment once we finish up the other two conferences. Other three conferences. Let's take a look at the next conference, and that will be the Big Ten, I believe. And that is the Big Ten Conference. Let's take a look at the teams we have had significant downgrades on. No surprise here, the biggest downgrade in the Big Ten Conference will be the Michigan Wolverines. Now, Michigan, we have downgraded Michigan, looks like about 21.5 points. This team has absolutely struggled against quality opponents, and this team is in a free-for-all right now on the season. Coming in right now with a 4-3 record. Wow, this team, just from an offensive standpoint, has not looked competent all season long. And as I look at their week-to-week chart, it has literally just been in a free drop from the start of the season till now. And it doesn't look to be going in an upward trend for the rest of the year. Another couple of teams that we've had significant downgrades on. The Purdue Boilermakers. We weren't high on Purdue coming into the preseason. and it's only gotten worse throughout the season. We've downgraded Purdue right at 17 points from where we had them in the preseason. Another team that we've downgraded, believe it or not, and this is a little bit of a surprise to me, but the numbers would absolutely kind of bear that out a little bit, and that is Penn State. Now, if you listen to our latest poll, Penn State is our number 3 ranked team overall, but when we look at just their pure power rankings and how they would stack up against the team on a neutral field, we've downgraded Penn State 11 points since the preseason. Now, we were extremely high on Penn State going into the preseason, but from a pure just power ranking standpoint, and our power rankings are how we kind of set the lines each and every week, we've seen a little bit of a downgrade for Penn State. Now, 11 points is significant, but when you look at the next team that I mentioned, they've also seen a pretty sizable downgrade, and that is our number 1 overall team, the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon, we've downgraded them from the preseason about 7 points. We actually, if you will remember, had Oregon as our preseason number 2 ranked team as far as the power rankings go. They, from a power ranking standpoint, right now sit at 7. Yes, they are our number 1 overall team, but their power rankings have dropped just a little bit. I think that has a little bit to do with some of the early games that they played on early on in the season weren't getting margin in those ball games. I think that that's still weighing on their overall power rankings. Now, a team that power ranking has not moved at all as far as where we had them in the preseason to where we have them now, and that is Ohio State. We were high on the Buckeyes. They were our number 3 power ranked team coming into the preseason. They're still ranked pretty high, our power rankings. Matter of fact, from a pure power ranking standpoint, Ohio State, despite having that loss on their resume, is our top ranked team as far as just a pure power rankings go. So that loss to Oregon on the road, very tight ball game, did not really hurt them as far as a pure power ranking standpoint. So on a neutral field, we're just as high on Ohio State now as we were going into the preseason. The biggest jump we've seen probably in college football is the Indiana Hoosiers. That's right, America's team. We have upgraded Indiana almost 32 points from where we had them in the preseason to where we have them now. And when I say points, I don't mean their power rankings just from where their power ranked, their power rankings. I know that can be a little bit cumbersome to break out, but going into the preseason, we liked Indiana, did not think that they would be 7-0 in this standpoint, and certainly not having the kind of dominance over the teams that they've played against. We know the competition hasn't been fierce, but it has been to where Indiana has looked dominant in all of their wins so far this season. We know that road is going to get a little bit stiffer going into November and into early December. But as of right now, Indiana has looked absolutely fantastic. We don't see another team outside of, correction. Michigan State, we've also upgraded about 9 points from the preseason. Now, their power ranking isn't fantastic, but 4-3, big game coming up this weekend against in-state rival Michigan. This is where Michigan State and head coach Jonathan Smith could really boost up their power rankings by not only playing well against Michigan, but if they're able to pull off an upset, that will absolutely increase their power rating even further than what they've already been upgraded on the season. if you look at the overall ranking of the conference, of all 18 teams, the average Big Ten team would be ranked 42nd. Jumping into our next conference is the Big 12, and want to just take a look at where the Big 12 is performing compared to kind of where we thought they would be from the preseason. And this was a conference that we thought Utah would win with a healthy Cam Rising and a really stout team there in Utah, that they would perform absolutely fantastic this year. Well, Cam Rising has not been healthy, and this team has not looked fantastic this year. Utah sitting there with a 4-3 record, one of the biggest downgrades we've had since the preseason started. We were absolutely high on Utah. We're not going to blame it all on injury. That's a part of the game, but Utah has been downgraded 19 points from where we had them in the preseason. Joining them as far as one of the biggest downgrades in college football is the Oklahoma State Sooners. Oklahoma State sits there with a 3-4 record. They've been downgraded 16 points from where we had them in the preseason. The other team that we've seen a massive downgrade on, and that is the Arizona Wildcats, also sitting there with a 3-4 record. Arizona has been downgraded 14.5 points from where we had them in the preseason. As far as some of the biggest surprises go, 3 teams really stand out as far as where their power rating has gone from the preseason till now. We're going to start with the most improved team in this conference, and that is the Cougars of BYU. BYU has seen their power rating improved by 18 points from where we had them in the preseason. Thought that this was going to be a team that coach was going to be on the hot seat. Kalani Sitake has done a fantastic job there in Provo, and his team sitting there with a 7-0 record has looked really good, and our power rankings has liked what they've seen from this team so far. So big kudos there for BYU. The biggest upgrade for the conference, and I probably could have started. No, I take that back. BYU did have the biggest upgrade. The next biggest upgrade is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Cincinnati, sitting there with a 5-2 record, has seen their power rating go up 14 points from the preseason. So we weren't expecting this out of Coach Satterfield there in Cincinnati, doing a fantastic job. Has his team right there in the hunt for a Big 12 championship game appearance. The other team that we've seen significant upgrades on, Arizona State. Head coach Kenny Dillingham doing a fantastic job there down in the desert. 5-2 record. We've seen their power rating go up 12 points since the preseason. So fantastic job there by Arizona State. And they also are in the hunt for a conference championship game appearance. A team that's been heavily talked about. Let's talk about them right here, and that is the Colorado Buffaloes. Coach Prime has that team 5-2. And we've seen Colorado upgraded 6 points in their power rating. So we actually like this team coming into the season. So that's why you don't see as big of a jump as with some other teams. We actually like this team in the preseason. They've absolutely outperformed our expectations. So that's why you see that bump. And the last thing we're going to mention here is Iowa State. We like the Cyclones coming into the season, but we've seen them upgraded almost 9 points from where they were in the preseason. So we've seen some teams absolutely do better than expected. Some teams that have absolutely not met expectations. So let's just take a look at the ranking for the conference, and the average team out of the 16 teams, the average ranking would be 46th right now. Like I said, we got one more conference to touch on, and then I'll kind of break this out a little bit more. And the final conference we're going to talk about is the Southeastern Conference. Boy, this conference has given us a lot of confusion here during the season. Some teams that have underperformed, some teams that have absolutely overperformed. So let's take a look at our underachievers so far. And we're going to start with the biggest downgrade, and that is, and this should be no surprise. Well, maybe a little bit of a surprise. The Missouri Tigers. Missouri has actually been downgraded 16 points from where they were in the preseason. We were extremely high on Missouri coming into the preseason, have not looked really well for some stretches in the season. Yes, they sit with a 6-1 record. They have a big time game coming up this weekend against Alabama on the road. And this team, if they have any hopes of making the college football playoffs, absolutely must win out and maybe even get some help along the way. But right now, Missouri has been our biggest downgrade so far. Another team that we've downgraded pretty significantly is the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia was extremely high coming into our preseason. Georgia's still high as far as where their rating goes. We've downgraded Georgia 12.5 points. Can't forget how bad they looked against Kentucky, and that loss against Alabama is proven to be one of the biggest head-scratching performances we've seen from a team this season with this kind of talent. So, Georgia, I will say this for any of our Georgia Bulldog fans listening: your power rank is still number 8. I think you came in as our number 1 overall preseason ranked team. So because of the loss, because of the way you looked against not only Kentucky but Mississippi State as well, that's affected your rating just a little bit. Not substantial, but there has been a noticeable drop as far as the expectation and how Georgia has performed on the field. Now, if Georgia takes care of business, that number will correct, and we'll see Georgia continue to move up, not only in our power ranking, but in our overall top 25. Another team that we've had massive downgrades on, and that is the Auburn Tigers. We've downgraded Auburn 9.5 points from where they were in the preseason. We thought that this team would struggle. They've absolutely done that and then some. 2-5 on the season, and it is not looking like the Auburn Tigers will be making a bowl game this year. Hugh Freeze, you need to address more than just the quarterback position down on the plains there. Let's talk about some of the positives here. Biggest upgrade in the conference, and this should be no surprise, the Vanderbilt Commodores. After that big upset win over Alabama at home, and has really looked good for most of the year. Vanderbilt, I'm really impressed with what I've seen from this team from the start of the season up until now. So really, with 2 losses on the schedule. Heartbreaking loss there on the road at Missouri, and of course that loss to Georgia Southern by 4 points. You can see why Vanderbilt power ranking is not even more improved. If they would have gotten one more of those wins under their belt, I would expect you would have seen that differential from the preseason to where they are now. I would venture to say that would probably be over a 20-point differential. So Clark Lee doing a fantastic job. As far as the Vanderbilt, where they're ranked as far as our power rankings go, they sit at number 36. So massive improvements there for the Commodores. Continue the great work that you've done so far. Another team that we've seen some significant upgrades on, especially from a double-digit standpoint, and that is the South Carolina Gamecocks. This team has improved their power ranking 13 points from the preseason. Weren't as high on this team coming into the season, thought that they would be a bowl team. It looks like Shane Beamer will get this team to a bowl game. And got to be honest with you, folks, this team still has a few more wins on the schedule if they can just take care of business. Now, a couple of teams that we absolutely need to talk about. Alabama, 5-2. They still sit as our third best team from a power ranking standpoint. As you remember, that's not where they were in our latest poll. I think they were 19th. So your power ranking is really kind of independent of your overall record. So Alabama 5-2. We've downgraded Alabama about 3 points from where they were in the preseason. They haven't had any blowout losses in their wins against really good teams. They haven't been dominant. Now, they were dominant in the first half against Georgia, did not finish that game out looking as dominant. And that's why you've seen Alabama with the slight downgrade. We'll see where they are for the rest of the season, but there's some work to be done there in Tuscaloosa. Another team, and Hotty Toddy, the Ole Miss Rebels. We were high on this team in the preseason. We haven't lost as much faith from a power ranking standpoint. Ole Miss, we've downgraded them about 2.5 points from where they were in the preseason. As I mentioned, 5-2 on the year, needs to just continue to stack wins. Ole Miss, you already have 2 losses. You have them both in conference. You need to win out, and you need to pull off a major upset here in just a few weeks to keep your playoff hopes alive. But as far as how we would judge you on a neutral field, only a slight downgrade for Ole Miss. And then finally, a team that has just been bleeding over the last few weeks, and that is the Oklahoma Sooners. Want to touch on them a little bit because this team has been downgraded as well, 12 points. So about the same downgrade as we've seen as for Georgia. Now, we weren't as high on Oklahoma coming into the year, and boy, has that proven out well. 4-3 on the year. We've downgraded Oklahoma by 12 points from where they were in the preseason. That is some big-time struggle there for the team in Oklahoma. They've just fired their offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell. Didn't think that he should have had the job to begin with. I don't care if he played at Oklahoma. I don't care if his dad was a legendary coach at Oklahoma. You should have gotten a much more qualified coach and offensive coordinator to replace Jeff Lebby, who's not a head coach at Mississippi State. That was a failure on Brent Venables' part. He needs to self-correct that in the offseason. Get somebody who understands how to build out an offensive game plan and develop those young quarterbacks before you lose one, if not both, to the transfer portal. Let's take a look at where the SEC teams would be ranked as far as the average team goes. From a pure power ranking standpoint, the SEC's average team is 26th. And when you look at what I'm about to talk about here in just a moment, and guys, we can leave that graphic up because now we're just going to kind of get into where we see how each of these conferences stack up. Let's take a look at and let's see if I can sort this. Okay, let's take a look at the group of five and see as far as how those conferences stack up. Because remember, one of these champions from the group of five is going to get an automatic playoff berth in the upcoming college football playoffs. So if we just look at which conference is the strongest from just a pure power ranking standpoint, we got to go with the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt comes in as our strongest group of five power ranked conference. And if we look at who's the best team in the Sun Belt right now, got a couple of names to throw out there. And you're looking at well, as far as the best power ranked team, you would be looking at James Madison. But if you're looking at the two teams that have a real good opportunity to represent the conference in the conference championship, it would be UL, University of Louisiana, and ULM, Louisiana Monroe. So those two teams are showing strong from a power ranking standpoint. Our next conference would be the American Conference. And we know we got some well-known names in that conference that are pacing really well. Starting off with Army, Navy, both undefeated, and Memphis sitting one game behind from an overall standpoint. So those three teams that are really in contention there, you're talking about Army, Memphis, and Navy. Our next power rated conference, that would be the Mountain West. And folks, we don't have to even scroll down to see which two teams those are because they will be playing this coming Friday night, Boise State and UNLV. This could be the first of two games between these teams. So if they take care of business, the loser is not out of winning the Mountain West because right now, odds on one of those teams will be likely the winner going into the Mountain West Conference Championship. Bringing up the rear, the MAC and Conference USA is the weakest of the group of five. Now, let's take a look at the Power Five. As far as strongest conference, weakest conference. Right now, from a pure power ranking standpoint, the ACC is the weakest of the Power Four. As I mentioned, their average rating is about 51. They have four teams that are in our top 25 as far as how they're power ranked. Coming in at the number 3 spot is the Big 12 with an average team ranking of 46.3. They also have four teams in our top 25 as far as the power rankings standpoint. Coming in at number 2, and I mean by a very thin margin is the Big Ten. And what's really helping the Big Ten right now is when we look at the Big Ten, looks like they have looks like the Big Ten has 4 teams with inside of the top 20. And that would be Ohio State at 1, Oregon at 7. I'm sorry, Indiana at 4, Penn State at 7, Penn State at 16. So let me go back through that since I butchered that a little bit. Ohio State, our number 1 power rated team, followed by Indiana at number 4, followed by Oregon at number 7, and Penn State 16th. So that's why the Big Ten is slightly ahead of the Big 12. The Big Ten also has 6 teams with inside of that top 25. And the Southeastern Conference, with an average team ranking of 26th, is our number 1 rated conference with 9 teams with inside of that top 25. And when we look at the Southeastern Conference, let's take a look at what's really aiding them. The highest power ranked team in the Southeastern Conference would be Texas right now as the number 2 power ranked team, followed by Alabama at 3. Ole Miss is at 5. Georgia is at 8. LSU is at 11. And this is what I mentioned on the top 25 podcast. LSU, from an overall standpoint, not as strong, but from a pure power ranking standpoint, LSU is the 11th best team as far as our pure power rankings go. Coming in at number 12 is South Carolina. And I'm just looking as far as any other teams in the top 20. Yes, we have a couple of more teams. Texas A&M is at 20. And folks, believe it or not, the Florida Gators are at number 23. So from just a pure power ranking standpoint, how you would be judged on a neutral field, the SEC is still pretty strong. And that's why you can still make the case for 4 teams getting a bid in the college football playoffs. It's because of the strength of the conference and not just being top heavy like what we're seeing from the Big Ten. Really, once you get outside of that top 4 in the Big Ten, it falls off rather quickly. In the SEC, you got a little bit more depth from, let's say, 1 through 10 than any other conference right now. So that's something to really bear in mind as we start to see the college football playoff committee start to release their top 25. We'll see how it lines up with our overall top 25 and if we have to make some adjustments. We built that top 25 weekly poll based on the 14 playoffs. So we may have to make a little bit of calibration once we see that first couple of polls come out from the playoff committee, now that we're having to evaluate 12 teams instead of just the 4 we had previously. So, folks, I just wanted to give you that nugget going into the big show coming up on tomorrow. And can't wait to be back with my team breaking down another exciting week of college football. So on behalf of my fantastic team, our talented co-host, Jessica and Summer, our senior handicapping analyst, Billy, who did a great job of helping me build out our power rankings and really using that to set our weekly lines even before Vegas releases their lines. We're able to kind of get out in front of the market and really find some real significant value. If you haven't done so this season and you would like some of that insider information that we've built and you want to use that for the rest of the season, please contact me and our team on Twitter at Crunchtime VIP and just say, can you put together a package for us for the rest of the season so we can start capitalizing on some of the betting tools that we have used this season to be really successful. Also, you can reach us by email at contact@crunchtimesportsadvantage.com. I want to see if I still have that here. Yes. Okay, I'm going to put that here up on the screen for you. So once again, you don't even have to go to the website. You can just email us directly at contact@crunchtimesportsadvantage.com. As for the half-season betting promo, and we'll get you out that code. We'll get you all the information that you need so you can start hitting some of those numbers the way that we have. Like I said, you can also reach us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Enjoy a little bit of college football tonight as we have 2 games coming up, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on the big show, breaking down our 6-pack of games for week 9 in college football. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And as always, God bless everybody.